Well, here's the story that the media is telling. They're saying it's all about racists trying to stop the brown horde from coming over the border, that Republican politicians are knuckling in under to the teabaggers. That's baloney. What's behind the new law in Arizona is swiping the Arizona elections. And this is happening all over the West, but that's where it's starting. And I know this because back in 2008, for BBC Television, Rolling Stone magazine, working with civil rights attorney Bobby Kennedy.
Europeans wonder, why are Americans so crazy? They keep reelecting this guy. Well, the answer is, we don't. They keep stealing these elections. And they stole it in 2000. They stole it in 2004. And they're all set up to steal it again.
I went to Arizona to find out, to investigate what appeared to be like an electoral pogrom against Hispanic voters. The Secretary of State there had blocked over 100,000 voters from registering on grounds that they weren't citizens, people who couldn't prove that they were citizens. Now, this was an attack on brown citizens that would have made Katherine Harris blush. Who was this Secretary of State? It's now Governor Jan Brewer, who, by the way, became governor not because she was elected, but because Barack Obama appointed her Democratic predecessor into his cabinet, so she popped up from Secretary of State to governor. She signed this law to continue the game that she'd started as Secretary of State, which is to block brown voters from getting to the ballot box. Now, how does this game work? What it says is that you can be stopped, and you are breaking the law if you don't have your citizenship papers with you. Now, very few people have citizenship papers, rarely carry them with them. Very few people have passports. Those that do are of a certain income level and of a certain shade, generally, of skin color, and a certain color of voter, red Republican. If you have a passport, you're likely to be richer, more Republican. If you don't, you're likely to be poor. And by the way, it goes way back to a program of harassment and voter suppression run by something called the Republican Eagles, under the direction of a young lawyer named William Rehnquist of Arizona. They used to stop voters at polling stations, Hispanic voters and Navajo Native American voters, and say, if you can't show us your citizenship papers and you vote, we could arrest you. And they cleared out the polling stations. Now they're taking the Rehnquist law, and believe it or not, that Nixon made that little racist slime ball the Chief Justice of the United States. They're taking the old Rehnquist game and turning it into a law. They're giving it a hammer. Now, who's going to enforce this law? Is it going to be racist? Let me tell you something. The guy in charge in Maricopa County, that is Phoenix, of enforcing this law is a guy named Sheriff Joe Arpaio. Sheriff Joe is already facing a grand jury investigation, possible indictment, over his racist antics. Will this guy be profiling people? Who are they going to stop? Who is Sheriff Joe going to stop to ask for papers? Well, I tested it myself because I went to Sheriff Joe's prison in Maricopa. And it has a big sign that says, illegal aliens may not visit this prison. Well, I wasn't stopped and asked for my papers. You look at the prisoners, and we know who Sheriff Joe is profiling. Now, how do I know that the 100,000 people that Secretary of State, now Governor Jan Brewer, decided to block from voting, 100,000, that they really weren't citizens? Well, the answer is she didn't arrest any of them. Attempting to register, attempting to vote, if you're not a citizen, is a big-time, jail-time crime, okay? You don't just get deported. You don't just get, oh, you're not allowed to vote. You get cuffed if they catch you every single time. So I went to Jan Brewer's office, and I said, in Arizona, I said, okay, 100,000 voters have been blocked. They're non-citizens. It's a huge crime wave. Okay, don't give me 100,000 names. Give me 100. And remember, we know who they are, because when you register to vote, you've got to give your name, and you got to give your address. It's easy to bust you, okay? So where are these 100,000 or even 100 illegal voters? The answer is there aren't any. They couldn't give me a single name. Not one. Because they aren't illegal voters. They're just voters that were caught in a racist trap set by the Republican Party of Arizona. Now, who is behind this game? It wasn't an Arizona issue. It's a Karl Rove issue.
I go to the grocery store and I want to cash a check to pay for my groceries. I got to show a little bit of ID. Why should it not be reasonable and responsible to say that when people show up at the voting place, they ought to be able to prove who they are by showing some form of ID?
It was Karl Rove who demanded that parties throughout the West especially come up with laws to suppress the vote of Hispanics by demanding all kinds of new ID and citizenship proof games. Now, he also tried to push prosecutors to bring phony prosecutions so that they could prove that there were a mass of illegal voters, hordes of voters.
Over 100 complaints. We investigated for almost 2 years. I didn't find one prosecutable voter fraud case in the entire state of New Mexico.
So, the Bush administration fired him.
Not prosecuting innocent people led to your removal?
Yeah, I mean, they wanted some splashy pre-election indictments that would scare these alleged hordes of illegal voters away. They were looking for improperly politicized U.S. attorneys to file bogus voter fraud cases.
So that's the game that's being played. These aren't illegal voters, and what's happening is it's a cover. See, now you say, well, what is the show me your papers kind of Soviet Gestapo line where the police can come and say, show me your citizenship papers? It's going to be used when people line up in registration drives to vote, when people go out to bring in voters on voting day, for voters at voting stations. It's going to be the old Rehnquist game. People are going to be told, you get in line, you don't have your papers, you're busted. Now remember, the law doesn't say we're busting you if you're not a citizen. The law says we're busting you if you don't have your papers. It's a very, very different thing. It's just like the game that they played with the voter registrations. Not that you're not a citizen. All you have to do in most states is say, I'm a citizen, and people don't abuse it. Because no illegal alien is going to give their name and address and end up in the Huskow just so some guy from Juarez can vote for a school bond in Maricopa. No, that's not happening. Now, I went and I found one of these evil, illegal voters, a woman named Shirley Priest, nearly 100 years old. Well, she didn't have her birth certificate. She never had a birth certificate. She's nearly a century old. Or they didn't have birth certificates. A lot of poor people never had, and don't have their birth certificates. So she was blocked from voting. And it says you're wearing an American flag.
Yeah, that's right.
Are you an American?
Yes, bloody. Listen, I never breathed a breath of life in a foreign country.
You've never been in a foreign country?
Never.
Now, did they let you vote?
Huh?
Did they let you vote?
Wouldn't let me vote in this thing
Why?
because I didn't have a birth certificate. In Clinton, Kentucky, they did not, in the state of Kentucky, they did not have birth certificates in 1910.
This nasty little Soviet-style show me your papers bill was introduced by State Senator Russell Pearson. He gave away his game that's about voting when he said that there are 5 million illegal aliens who've been registered, all of them Democrats. I spoke to his office. Another guy couldn't give me the name of any of them, even though when you register you have your names and addresses, right? It's a fake. It's a phony. The idea is that they're supposedly stopping Mexicans from crossing the border to take away your jobs. That they don't care about that. Listen, if you didn't have Mexicans crossing the border, who else would mow John McCain's lawns at his 8 houses, or take care of the lawns at the country club? Let's face it, that the rich retirees in Sedona are not going to bust their own dishes at the restaurants. So it's not about stopping Mexicans from coming over that are illegal aliens. It is all about stopping legal Hispanics, citizens, from exercising their civil rights.
Goodbye, Rosalita. Adios, mis amigos. Say, Maria. You won't have a name when you ride the big airplane. all little colony will be deported. Now my father's own father, he waited that room. They took all the money that he made in his line. 600 miles to the Mexican